Okay, we're back. A couple of technical difficulties today. We will wait for everyone to rejoin and reconnect. We apologize. I hope all the other, we had 130 people on, so we'll just wait till everyone can rejoin. It's not a new day because we've been doing this for a couple of months. But technology is not always on our side, and when it is, we're grateful for it, and when it's not, we're So again, thank you for your patience. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us, I hope you had an opportunity to participate in the poll. We're going to give you a very quick overview for the noobs, and if you've been a returning attendee, we've been doing this every Tuesday since March 31st. And we try to pack a lot of information in a short amount of time. So you're saying, why are we doing this? Because before, as a center, as a research center, we would host in-person, high-quality, informative, thought-provoking, engaging sessions with you. And because we can't be with you in person, we are with you virtually. So every week we're bringing you information that can help you age well while you are having to shelter at home. So today you're going to hear from a phenomenal lineup. Each week we have exercise, and we typically begin with exercise, but one of our renowned speakers is in the middle of clinic. So we will have to let her present first. And Dr. Parker is here. She's going to tell you about what you can expect today. Remember to use the chat or the Q&A function if you have questions. Again, thank you for joining the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parker so she can tell you what you're in for today.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us again on our BrainTalk Live. We've been going strong since March, and it looks like we're going to be doing this for the duration. Our first speaker today is Dr. Sharon Berquist. She is an associate professor of internal medicine here at Emory, and she is an aging specialist. She has her own blog, and she is very much interested in healthy aging. Here at the Brain Health Center, whatever it is we talk about, we do everything we can to help you maintain your health as an older adult, but more importantly, how to maintain your brain function to forestall or prevent anything that might look like it might be Alzheimer's, some other related dementias. What people don't really always understand is there's a lot you can do independent of waiting for Alzheimer's to appear that keeps you and protects your brain. So right now, I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker, Dr. Sharon Berquist. She'll be followed by John Lewis and his exercise. And then you're going to hear from Dr. Reisa Sperling, who is the director of the Alzheimer's Research Center and Treatment Program at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. And she's director of the Neuroimaging Core for the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And she's one of the lead investigators or the principal investigator for the A4 study, which has to do with an interventional drug for preventing and treating Alzheimer's. Our second speaker from Oregon Health Sciences University is Dr. Hiroko Dodge. She's a biostatistician for dementia research. She is now full-time at Oregon Health Sciences University, formerly at the University of Michigan, and she studies the effects of social isolation and how that affects your brain's function. She additionally conducts research with a study, has been following a cohort of Japanese seniors since 2007 for social isolation and other things that improve brain health there. So looks like Sharon's slides are up and we're ready to go. Dr. Berquist.
And Dr. Berquist, I make you a co-host since you're not able to share your screen, and I think at that point you should be able to, or start your video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I apologize for not being able to join the video function. I was able to, and then for some reason my webcam is having some difficulty. So, but I can see the slides, and thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you to everyone who is joining us today. So I'm going to be speaking about healthy aging, and I'm going to see if I can advance these slides myself. So no, Cornelia, can you go ahead to the next slide, please? Okay, perfect. So I want to first give everyone just a context into this term healthy aging, because we use it so commonly today, it's easy to lose perspective that it's really just been in recent decades that that term has existed. So in the 1950s, one of the longest longitudinal studies on aging began, and it was called the Baltimore Longitudinal Study on Aging. And it was the first study to ask the question, what is normal with aging? And about 20 years into the study, so by the mid 1980s, they presented their findings, which was that a lot of the diseases that we associate with aging, like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, are not actually a part of aging. These are diseases that are common with aging, but not so much part of the normal aging process. And that study also showed us that people age at different rates. And in the 1980s, the MacArthur Foundation study of successful aging was another landmark study. And this is the study that termed the term successful aging. And it was the first time where instead of gerontology or the science of aging, started to look at what are the components that help us age better. Prior to that, most of the focus of research was on debility and decline with aging. The following decade, we had a Danish twin study that is very frequently quoted that showed us between even twins that are genetically the same, that about 25% of longevity is based on our genes and about 75% is based on lifestyle. It's in our control. And around that time, the blue zones were discovered. And for people who are not familiar with blue zones, the National Geographic and a group of demographers found hotspots throughout the world where people live exceptionally long lives, so centenarians who are very healthy. And they deduced empirically by interviewing these centenarians what are the lifestyle and habits that people across these different cultures had in common. And fast forward to today, or as of 2000, since the human genome has been unraveled, if you will, we are delving deeper now into the biomarkers and understanding aging at a molecular level. So we're looking at interventions that can slow aging and detect age-related diseases at an earlier age. And these are some of the studies that are ongoing at the ADRC, including the Healthy Aging Study, the Emory Healthy Brain Study, amongst other studies. And so I'm going to see if I can advance now. I still can't. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Cornelia. So what's emerged is a biopsychosocial model of healthy aging, where we understand how we age to be a blend of our genes, our lifestyle, and our environment. And as I mentioned previously, we know that as much as 75% of longevity may be due to non-genetic attributes, and oftentimes what we focus about on lifestyle and intervention are behavioral factors that affect how we age and our risk of chronic disease. Specifically, we focus on our diet, how much we exercise, how much we sleep, and as an internal medicine physician, those are the more common conversations we have in the doctor's office. But just as much, and if not a greater part of how we age and our risk for chronic disease is psychological. So it's based on how we manage our stress, social connections we have, whether we can find meaning and purpose, optimism, how we perceive aging. And so next slide, please. And the question is, well, how do these factors work? What is it about our stress or how we eat that influences our susceptibility to disease as well as to aging at an accelerated rate? And it turns out that the same processes that lead to chronic disease are the ones that accelerate the aging process. So some of these, for example, you've probably heard of, but inflammation is one of these. And inflammation you're all familiar with, because when you get a cut, you want to get inflammation to heal the cut, or if you've been exposed to a virus or a bacteria, you need to mount an inflammatory response from your immune system to fight the pathogen. But when you have inflammation at a chronic low-grade level, it increases susceptibility to disease and premature mortality. Same with stress, and by the term stress, it's not just psychological stress, but also physical stress. And it's not just whether the stress is present, but it also is whether, how you respond to that stress. So it's your stress reactivity, and there's a lot around that that you can control. Damage seems to contribute. One of the most common forms of damage is oxidative damage. And so in our environment, from sunlight, from tobacco exposure, as well as just from our body generating ATP, we can get damage from free radicals. And we have antioxidants in this antioxidant defense system that tries to keep these free radicals in check before they can damage our DNA and our proteins. And if we don't have enough antioxidants, for example, from phenol type family in foods, such as in fruits and vegetables, we don't adequately maintain our antioxidant defenses. Epigenetics are yet another way where our lifestyle and behavioral factors influence our risk of aging. And epigenetics literally means epi, on top of our genes. So these are modifications where how we express our genes can change. So whether we turn on good genes or turn off bad genes. So for example, curcumin, the active component in turmeric, can epigenetically modify your genes to more optimally express your genes. And then there's a lot of interest this decade in omics. And omics is this broader umbrella of not just genomics, but also epigenomics, and the proteins that we express, that are expressed by our genes. So proteomics, the metabolic products, the metabolomics. So it's this whole kind of genre of delving deeper within our genome to find these earlier marks and these biomarkers for disease. So this is helping us lead the way in precision medicine. And next slide, please. Thank you. So the question is, so knowing what we know, what can you do today to start adding life to years and adding years to your life? So by that, I mean living longer, but also preventing disease. And to get more into the specifics of diet, 1 in 5 deaths around the world are now linked to diet. It's one of the biggest contributors to how we age. And I'm going to show a slide coming up next when we get into more detail about what is it about diet, like what are the factors, because the term diet is so broad in general that I want to speak more to the specifics of what you can do. Exercising can also reduce mortality by 31%. So the physical activity guidelines recommend 150 minutes or roughly 30 minutes, 5 or more days a week of walking or any aerobic activity, plus at least twice a week of strength resistance exercises. Sleeping, trying to get at least 7 or more than 8 or 9 hours even of sleep is really important. Getting less than 7 can shorten your lifespan. Stress resilience is extremely important, and I think we're going to hear about how to build that resilience throughout this talk series. Loneliness is an epidemic that probably doesn't get enough attention, but when we lack high quality relationships, our risk of death can be 50% higher compared to people that have strong relationships. And another really important component is feeling a sense of purpose.
Yeah, she's in the break room. Hi, how are you?
And feeling a sense of purpose
Okay.
is extremely important because it can influence how you age almost more than some of these behavioral factors. So next slide, please.
Yeah, so I don't know if she's on her laptop.
Next slide, please.
We think she's always
Okay, thanks.
like
When we look at diet, and I want to delve into this a little deeper, the best study that has really illustrated the dietary factors that contribute to longevity is a study called the Global Burden of Disease. And here, what you're looking at are an analysis of dietary factors assessed in 195 countries over the span of 27 years. And as you can see here, this red line are the number of deaths attributed to diet from heart disease. The orange line is from deaths from diabetes. The lighter orange is deaths from cancer. And the lightest color is from other causes. And this graph is attributing the number of deaths to different dietary components. For example, we hear a lot that eating red meat is bad for our health. And if you look at deaths attributed to red meat intake, you can see that that's at the very bottom of the slide in terms of number of deaths that are caused by red meat. If we go a little higher, looking at deaths from processed meat, that's like cold cuts, for example, more deaths are attributed to that than from red meat. If you go to the middle of the graph, you could see that diets that don't have enough legumes contribute to a moderate amount of deaths. In the middle of the slide, you'll also see if we're not getting enough fiber, our risk of death goes up. But these highest bars at the very top are from diets that are low in vegetables, low in nuts and seeds, low in fruits, low in whole grains. And the top of the slide is diets that are too high in sodium. And the take home here is that by adding more whole grains, fruits, nuts, seeds, and vegetables, we can reduce our rate of premature death more than by reducing sugar sweetened beverages, processed meats, and red meats, which is what we definitely focus a lot more on from a public health standpoint. Next slide, please. And I also want to talk a little bit more about purpose in life. So what you're seeing on the right is a graph from two very large cohort studies. One was the Rush Memory and Aging Project, another the Minority Aging Research Study. And in 1,238 people that were followed over 5 years, you can see in the lower bar graph, those are people that were in the 90th percentile, having the highest purpose in life. And then the top graph are the people that had the lowest purpose in life. They were in the lowest 10th percentile. And the rate of mortality, of death over the 5-year period, and the people who had the highest purpose in life was about 57% of the rate of people who had the lowest purpose in life. And that's, quite a large difference from this specific component. And I want to speak more about purpose in life in the next slide, because if you could advance, please. Because it's one thing to, say diet, but understanding the specific dietary components matters. And it's another to say, well, it's important to find purpose versus, what can you do to find purpose and meaning? And there is an evidence-based way to approach finding meaning, and it's called life crafting. And then the reference is provided at the bottom of the slide for people who are more interested in this. And life crafting is based on research. It's called a wise intervention, in that a lot of psychological interventions to change a behavior typically can be multiple sessions over a large amount of time. Wise interventions are either one-time or very short, brief interventions that can change outlook, change behavior. And life crafting, which involves just writing your personal narrative in sessions as short as 15 minutes, can make a difference in your behavior and your ability to lead a purposeful life. And what it is specifically, it's a process in which people actively reflect on their present and future life. They set goals for important areas of their life in their social, career, and leisure time, and if required, make concrete plans and undertake actions to change these areas in a way that is more congruent with their values and wishes. So specifically, it's taking time to find out what you stand for, and not just envisioning it, but feeling your best future self. Because when you tap into the feeling or the emotional component, you're tapping into your subconscious, which generally understands and knows what you truly want. And sometimes the cognitive brain, the conscious brain, can filter it based on, say, what your aunt always wanted you to do, or what your great-grandfather wanted you to do. So tapping into feelings helps keep you aligned with what you truly want for your own future. And then writing a narrative puts where you were in the past, your present, and your future all in context, because when you're finding purpose, it's more than just smart goals of what you want for your future. You want to put it in the context of why you've done the things you've done in your past, where you want to go and how that adds meaning to what you're doing today. So it's more broad to do life crafting than just to set SMART goals. And then it is important to set those goals, and number two, and how to make it happen. So goals can be large, they can be theoretical, but you need a very specific goal attainment plan so you can work towards that goal. And then making a public commitment about your future plans is a big part of moving forward towards developing purpose. So I'll stop there and then let the next person go.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Cornelia, I'll let you go on and lead. I think we're moving right into John Lewis's presentation right now. For those of you who have asked about slides, we are going to show this, send you the presentations after this, but right now we have John's presentation. Is that not correct?
That's right. Okay, John, take us away. We're doing things a little different this week, but we have a lot to cover. So you can come on in and wake us up, and all of the things that Dr. Berquist just talked about. We're trying to share that information with you, and not only share it, but demonstrate good real life examples of that. So John is our exercise guru. He's going to come on and get us moving, and then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Dodge. John, are you
all right?
Okay.
Okay. I hope we just wanted to welcome you and let you understand. I hope you got a comfortable chair. And today, if you're using a water bottle, we can use one water bottle today. And if you don't have it, it's okay. All right. We're going to step that cardio up today. So let's get started. Here we go. I need those ankles. All right. Let's go side to side. We work warming them ankles up. We telling that body, let's go. Lift that knee up. We getting those hips. One leg. We warming the hips up. We getting that waistline. Walk with me. Boom, 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 boom. Wider. Boom, 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 boom. Keep stepping. We're going to get these steps in today. Come on. Walk. Wide. Close. Wide. Close. Wide. Close. Wide. Great job. If you have a water bottle, dumbbells, a towel, anything you want, if not, we're gonna do a little body sculpting. There we go. Up. There we go. Come on. Up. Come on. Up. Up. And rest. Okay? Press. Press. Extend the arms. We get a nice stretch. And we get that waistline, that chest. Rest. I'm gonna grab the side of mine, elbows out to the side, and pull, 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 pull. Make sure that back is straight. Come on, pull, pull, and rest. I need you to lean back a little bit. Cross chest, elbows out to the side, and press, 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 and rest. I'm gonna grab it underneath. I'm gonna put my elbows on my knees, and let's get these biceps. Curl, let's go. We body sculpting that body. We tighten that upper body up. And remember, since we're doing movement, we're doing something good for our bodies. Rest. Everybody asked me about the back of the arms, the triceps. Behind the head, elbows in, extend, 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 and rest. All right, our next one. What I want you to do is almost like you put it in your pocket. Bring it up. Boom. Yeah. Boom. Come on. Pull. 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 Great job. Next one, after this a little bit, we're gonna press, turn the hip, and if you don't want to turn, just press and press. Let's go. Press, 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 press. Let's go up at an angle. Press, 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 and good. Our next one, let's get a little light stretch in. Grab the knee, and I just want you to go in and out. We're getting that hip flexor stretched out, those glutes. For any sciatic nerve problems, you have to stretch. Other leg. I know if you're taking pills to relax the body, but you have to stretch and make sure you get that sciatic nerve stretched out. Reach, toes flexed up. Let's go wide. Nice motion, smooth. Good. Right leg bent, left leg straight. Let's go. Switch legs and go. Good. Legs wide, cross chest. Last two, last two. Let's go left to right. Let's go. One more. And good. Next week, we're gonna really turn the energy up, and we're gonna make sure we get some high-end cardio. Have your water bottles, have your chair, because we're going to the islands next week. So I wanna see you there and tell others. I wanna say, everybody do your part during this pandemic and be safe. I'm John Lewis, and see you later, bye.
Okay. Well, I hope you guys are energized and invigorated, and welcome again if you are just joining us. We have a lot to cover. We opened with Dr. Sharon Berquist talking about healthy aging. And last week we talked about super aging. She talked about the major aging issues. And so she had to go to clinic, but we are so thankful that she was able to join us. And as we mentioned, there is so much to cover. There is one question while we transition, Dr. Parker, if you want to address this if you can, or if we want to hold off until Dr. Sperling can address this. This may be part of her talk today, but one question was about research using epigenetics and genomics. Is there any DNA research that is available, and who is actually doing this?
I did see that question in the chat, and what I would suggest for anybody who's interested in research, there is a site called Research Match. If you're interested in any type of research, you go to researchmatch.com, you put in your information and your subject of interest, and they will direct you towards specific studies. So different Alzheimer's disease research centers have different studies going on. So again, I put that in the chat and directed the answer to that person. So www.researchmatch.com is a place that you can go to find research studies anywhere in the country. So we'll go on with Reisa, Dr. Reisa Sperling.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for definitely waking me up. I enjoyed that. Monica, Dr. Parker knows I love dancing. So thanks for having me today. And I actually am going to follow up pretty much on what was just discussed about how we might try to prevent cognitive decline. And let me say, even though I'm going to be talking about interventions with biological agents and medications, I think we're going to need both, both lifestyle and life purpose, as well as being more aggressive, just like we do with heart disease, where diet and exercise make a big difference, but also lowering blood pressure and lowering cholesterol with statins in combination really help. So I'm going to talk today about our work in preventing memory decline in Alzheimer's disease with medications that are going after the underlying brain process. Next slide. So one of the important things, and I suspect most of you are aware of this, is that we've realized over the past couple of decades that Alzheimer's disease really represents a continuum. And many of us, including people of family members, I'm included in that, as well as clinically, we think of Alzheimer's disease at the stage of dementia, when people really lost their independence. And there's been some work already to move that earlier and think about people in the stage we call mild cognitive impairment, or sometimes prodromal Alzheimer's disease, where people have a little bit of memory problems but are still independent. And that's already really helped us in our trials. But importantly, we now recognize that Alzheimer's disease begins probably more than a decade prior to that. And we refer to this as preclinical Alzheimer's disease, meaning people have brain changes of Alzheimer's disease that we can see with imaging and biomarkers, but they don't yet have symptoms. At that stage, it's very hard to tell apart preclinical Alzheimer's disease from what I'll put normal aging. And I put this in quotes because as I age, there's nothing normal about it. But at this preclinical stage, we need special measures to be able to detect Alzheimer's disease in the brain. Next slide. So one of the ways we do this is with imaging, with PET imaging in particular. And we started these studies, almost 10 years ago now. But I'm sure many of you have heard of amyloid. These are plaques that build up in the brain from amyloid. And now we can see that during life using special scans like PET scans. At the stage of Alzheimer's dementia, most people who already have dementia have a lot of amyloid. And about half of the people who have mild cognitive impairment already have a lot of amyloid. But importantly, this group that's called CN here, which stands for clinically normal, about 25% or maybe even 30% of people over the age of 65 also have amyloid buildup in their brains. And that's a real chance for us potentially to intervene before these people have symptoms. Next slide. So you've heard, I'm sure, as I mentioned, about these amyloid plaques, and you might have also heard about tau tangles. These are the other hallmark pathology in Alzheimer's disease, and they occur in different parts of the brain. But one of the first discoveries we've made is that these people who are still normal, clinically normal again, who have a lot of amyloid, they also show evidence of tau in the middle column here, beginning to spread out into the rest of the brain. And unfortunately, we now know that even though people might be normal at the time when they have a lot of amyloid, if they have this tau building up, unfortunately, it's very likely that they'll develop symptoms, memory decline within 2 years. Next slide. So why is this important? Well, because it gives us a chance to be thinking about how we could intervene at this stage of Alzheimer's disease. So most of the trials you've probably heard about so far are done at the stage of mild cognitive impairment or dementia. And I'm sure you've heard about these studies, and I know Emory has done a number of these. And hopefully we're starting to see a little bit of success perhaps with aducanumab or other drugs, but they've moved earlier in this stage of mild cognitive impairment, and we'll see what happens. Primary prevention, which is over on the left, is of course what we all want. We want to find something safe enough to put in the drinking water of everybody over the age of 18 and prevent amyloid plaques and tangles from forming all to begin with. But those 70-year trial designs are very hard. So we're really focused on what I'll call secondary prevention. And what we mean here is finding people who have evidence of Alzheimer's disease in their brains, but they don't yet have the symptoms. And our job is to try to help prevent them from progressing and developing these symptoms. Some of these trials also pick people on the basis of their genetic predisposition to Alzheimer's disease, and again, try to prevent the symptoms from occurring. Next slide. So the first trial I'm going to mention briefly here is called the A4 study. This stands for Anti-Amyloid Treatment of Asymptomatic Alzheimer's Disease. That's a mouthful, so of course we call it the A4 study. And this is the first of its kind. It's a secondary prevention trial in people who are 65 to 85 who were found to have evidence of elevated amyloid on a brain scan, a screening PET scan. This is a big study across 67 sites, and it's the first phase 3 study, which means an FDA registration of this type in people who don't yet have symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. This study actually started back in 2014. We finished enrollment in 2017, and we hope to get results by 2022. Next slide. I won't tell you much of this data here, but I think I wanted to show you just a couple slides. We ended up screening over 7,000 people in the clinic, and we did PET scans, these amyloid PET scans, on 4,486. So we have tremendous numbers of people to start to test things. And many of the things that we thought would be risk factors for developing Alzheimer's disease, and probably are, turned out not really to be risk factors for having amyloid plaque buildup in your brain. So women more likely to get Alzheimer's disease, not necessarily more likely to have amyloid, although in other studies we've seen they may have more tau. And as somebody who has just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary, I was also disappointed to see that staying married unfortunately doesn't protect you against amyloid, nor does retirement. Early retirement's a risk factor for dementia, but later retirement not really a protective factor, at least against amyloid. Next slide. So one of the important things that we need to do more in our research is really try to understand the factors that might make somebody more at risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, or importantly, more at risk for developing memory decline. And so one of the things we tried hard in the A4 study, although I don't think we fully successfully did this, was to try to have a more diverse group of participants who would come in and screen for the study. We ended up with only about 11% of individuals in all who came from diverse backgrounds, but already we saw some very interesting things here. So not surprisingly, we saw that people who come from Asian descent were a little less likely to have amyloid buildup in their brain. And this is largely a genetic risk factor because they're less likely to carry one of these important genes for late onset Alzheimer's disease called ApoE4. I saw the question about genetics. So that wasn't so much surprising. But what was surprising to us was that among Black and African Americans, we also saw a little bit lower likelihood of having elevated amyloid. This was a surprise because we initially thought, because we know African Americans, Blacks have a higher likelihood of developing dementia, that we might see more amyloid. But in fact, I think this is another study that's come out since then, which really suggests that the problem for increasing risk of dementia among Blacks and African Americans is not just amyloid and tau and Alzheimer's disease, but probably factors that interact with that. And I think that's critically important so we get medications that work best in different populations. We didn't see actually any evidence that being from a Latino or a Hispanic background made a difference in the level of amyloidosis in screening. Next slide. So one of the most exciting things I want to talk about today is that now we're actually going to move even younger and even earlier in the process. So we started a new study called the AHEAD study, and this is actually going down to age 55, and importantly, trying to find people with just small amounts of amyloid in their brain to try to prevent them from getting more amyloid and tau. That's the A3 part of the study. And in the A4-5 part of the study, we're actually finding people who are still normal but have a lot of amyloid plaque buildup and aggressively dosing them with an antibody to decrease amyloid plaque to try to prevent them from having cognitive symptoms. Next slide. So I know we are short on time and I want to make sure Dr. Dodge has time, so I hope I'll answer questions about this, but I just wanted to tell you how you can get involved if you're interested. Again, the AHEAD study will go down to age 55 and up to age 80. And in the younger group, the 55 to 64-year-olds, we're looking for people who have a strong family history or a known genetic risk factor, because it's pretty rare to have amyloid plaque buildup below the age of 65. There's a series of screening steps that determine whether people are the right fit for this study or not, including getting PET scans for amyloid scans and tau PET scans and MRI. And excitingly, some special blood tests that we're using to help us learn about who might be most likely to have amyloid buildup in their brains. We're also starting a study that's a web study trying to see if doing tests over the internet can help us identify the people who might be the best fit for these future prevention studies in a trial-ready cohort. And there is the link for that one. And also the Alzheimer Clinical Trial Consortium. So this is a big NIH group where we're all working together to try to figure out how we can make these trials more successful and ultimately prevent this disease. I'm so happy because Emory is a key steering committee member on this study, and I'd be thrilled to work with anyone at Emory in working on these new studies. So let me end there, and then I hope if there are either questions for me now or we can go on, because I know I went through that pretty quick.
Thank you, Dr. Sperling. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn this part of the talk over to Cornelia. I want you to keep moving things along, Cornelia. I see we're kind of running short.
Yes, so we are a little pressed for time and we may go over. We apologize this week, but we just had such a phenomenal lineup with you today. As we transition to Dr. Dodge, Dr. Sperling, can you briefly explain why do women have more tau?
Oh, absolutely. So this is something we're really interested in. So we think, unfortunately, that women, again, they're not more likely to get amyloid, but they seem to be more vulnerable when they get amyloid. So for a certain amount of amyloid, women in some areas of their brain have twice the amount of tau. And in particular, if they carry one of these genetic risk factors, ApoE4. So we don't fully know whether that's hormonal, whether it's other influences. People have brought up stress and lots of other things. things, but it is pretty clear that the women are more at risk for Alzheimer's dementia, not just because they live longer, but because the biology and response, at least to these amyloid plaques, looks different.
Okay, all right. So Dr. Dodge, we apologize. I had to switch some things around, but I do have your slides up and ready to go.
Yeah,
And you can just tell
I
me.
have a, yeah, I can share my slide actually. That's a
Okay,
little
all
bit
right. So
older
let me,
version, so
let me
sorry
give
about
you
that.
control. That's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
those. All right. So any second, you should be able to share your screen and advance slides.
Okay, not yet, but hopefully. I'll wait a little bit and
Yeah, it's a little delay.
I still say host disabled participant screen sharing. No, not yet. Did you already?
Did you
Now I
see
can do
something
that.
pop
Yeah.
up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Yep.
So nice to practice. Thank you. All right, here we go. Can
Beautiful.
you share? Oh, great. Yay, technology works. Thank you. Hi, I'm Hiroko Dodge. I'm professor of neurology at Oregon Health and Science University. And I'm so pleased that, thank you for inviting me today. And I'd like to discuss the importance of social interactions for cognitive and emotional well-being today. By doing so, I'd like to introduce my project, an NIH-supported project called iConnect. So I would like to start with a movie. Humans are social animals. Now, have you ever seen the movie called Castaway? In this movie, Tom Hanks is play a major role, and his plane was crashed, and he's the only survivor, and he was stranded in a very isolated island. And after a week or so, without talking to anybody, he started to feel crazy. You know, his brain started to feel crazy. So he created this body using a volleyball, this one, or soccer ball or something. So it's called Wilson. And now he put the face on this ball. And whenever he go for a walk or make meals, he talk as if he's talking to family, like, hey, Wilson, do you want to go for a walk? Hey, Wilson, what do you want to eat for the breakfast? So that tells you how important it is to talk every day with somebody else to make brain function smoothly. And you don't even need to know scientific research, because if you want to experiment how social isolation slows down your brain, you can stay in a house and without 1 week talking to nobody, then you can start to feel your brain start to move much slower. So next slide. So it's not surprising, therefore, that we found a big, strong association between social isolation and dementia risk. For example, recently published Lancet Commission's report showed that 4% of dementia cases can be prevented by eliminating social isolations. And this population attributable percentage is same magnitude like smoking, 5%, and depression, 4%. And it's even higher than other risk factors such as physical activity, pollution, and diabetes. For example, if you prevent diabetes at later life, only 2% of dementia cases in the national level will be prevented. But if you eliminate social isolation, 4% of dementia cases can be prevented. So the research I just showed based on the large group of people, like 3,000, 4,000 people, and then longitudinal follow mid-life to late life. But we cannot answer from these large, big study cohort called epidemiological cohort study. From these studies, what we do not know is that does increasing social interactions at advanced stages lead to improve the cognitive function, and are they mediated by emotional well-being or gains from that kind of interactions? and what are the biological mechanisms. There are many unanswered issues. For example, playing cards with friends was found to be one of the activities which might prevent or which might delay the onset of dementia. But playing a card has so many components. You might talk with a friend while playing card, so you have a social component. Of course, playing cards also stimulate cognition. But if you go to YMCA or somebody's house walking to play cards, that include some of the physical activities. So all these activities shown in epidemiological big cohort studies, there are many components, and we don't know which one is working to enhance brain activity, or do we need all these components to make brain work better. So that said, we need clinical trials. So clinical trials is assign people to experimental group and control group, and then how experimental group people improve in the cognitive function. So I'm fortunate that I'm funded for over 10 years in NIH to conduct randomized control trials aimed to enhance cognitive functions through social interactions using video chat. So we use the video chat and talk with people for 30 minutes. First one was funded between 2010, so it's almost 10 years ago, and then finished 2014. And based on the promising results from the pilot study, we were funded after 2016 then for 2 additional studies. One is targeting normal people, those with normal cognition, and another targeting to those with mild cognitive impairment, which Dr. Reisa, Dr. Sperling just mentioned, like between the stage between normal and dementia. So in this series of randomized controlled trials, participants engage in 30 minutes of semi-structured conversation with trained interviewers, we call conversational staff. And control groups receive only 10 minutes phone call per week. Video chat is great because it requires little motivation. So those who mild cognitive impairment people are more likely to be very apathetic, but those people who are apathetic can also join. And the video chat also can reach those with chronic illness, homebound, and oldest older participants. So what we found from the pilot study, so mean age of the pilot study was 80 years old, which is we targeted, and adherence was very high, almost 90%, and coherence is 0.51, which is a relatively strong effect size. Now this is our first pilot study device. So we make it user-friendly as much as possible. So this is, you can see in the left side, it's a conversational staff. Her name is Mati, and she's a wonderful staff doing the interview with the participants. And the right side, so when we want to show the picture, stimuli pictures, it's pop up. So this was this kind of so user-friendly device is much needed in this type of trial, so that we can detain the participants, do not frustrate participants, and then also confounding effect, like how to learn using internet, video chat, that stimulate cognitive function. So in the ongoing study, we are using Chromebook. So the pilot study, it was 10 years ago, so we used very bulky space occupying PC and then laptop, PC and monitors, but now technology advanced over the 10 years. So we use a relatively small iPad-sized Chromebook, and we made it again, it's user-friendly. For example, here, you see that, one more time. Yeah, so if you put the chat button in the middle, our interviewer shows up and then greets you. That's what we developed. And in this two R1-2 projects, NIH-funded project. We are targeting socially isolated seniors, 75 and older, and part is normal and part is MCI, and we are aiming to recruit 50% African American participants. And outcome include brain volume changes and medication adherence, as well as cognitive functions. Now, why are we targeting to age 75 and older? Some of your audience might be age 75 and older, but what we are finding, other researchers are finding is that up until, so this y-exit is loneliness and social isolation, level of social isolation, and this x-exit is age. So up until age 75, loneliness level actually decrease. But then after 75, it's climb up again. So around like 90 and above, so many people have socially isolated and feel lonely. So this is a group that we really target to improve their social interactions so that we can improve their cognitive function. So outcome is cognitive function, and also how this function translate into daily activities such as medication adherence. That's we are trying to examine. And also changes in speech characteristics. Interestingly, many studies found that speech characteristics utterances can detect those who are getting dementia versus staying normal. So this is an interesting area of study. And then other things is brain connectivity, etc. So I just want to show what kind of things we are talking. For example, every day we have a daily theme, like here, example is World Wonders. And then among under one theme, we have like 3 pictures to choose from, and participants can choose which one they want to talk first. And then at the interviewer side, we have lots of standardized questions, but question is only to stimulate the conversation. We'd like to make this very natural as possible, natural conversation as possible. Therefore, prompt is standardized, but when conversation goes on, it can naturally flow. And that's our intention. So time is limited, so we can skip this one. So I just really enjoyed this dancing. I love dancing too. So this is the pictures from dancing. And many people want to talk about this one. I think it's somehow historical, Sammy Davis Jr. and Marilyn Monroe. And it seems to be associated with the memories of participants. So they tend to choose this picture a lot, like this. So during the pandemic, since many people are confined in their house, we found that our study provided a good way of keeping socializing. So one participant, right after a March 17 pandemic, this participant said, "Hello, it's so nice to talk with you. You are the first person I've talked to all week, and I'm stuck in this house all alone." So we are getting good feedback, and I feel the pandemic really created more and highlighted the importance of social interaction in our daily life. And then another example I would like to show is that my interviewer mentioned this recent meeting. My participants really opened up to me today and wanted to express her gratitude for this study and what this has done for her. She had essentially confined herself to her apartment bedroom for years, barely ever coming out of her room. She said that this study has been life-changing for her, as it has given her a reason to come out of her room again. And her therapist was very excited. She has since then getting rid of unnecessary things around her apartment and has ever began picking up some of her knitting and crochet, hobbying again. she moved her rocking chair out into the common area and has been able to get to enjoy the sunlight coming from the windows, and is even going to attend her apartment complex for Halloween party. She's very much looking forward. So as Dr. Berquist mentioned in her first presentation today, greater purpose in life. So somehow conversing with others might give more greater purpose in life, something to look for. So I just want to point out loneliness versus social isolation. Loneliness is a subjective feeling of isolated, but social isolation is objectively, just physically being isolated. Two are different concepts. However, both concepts, for example, lead to higher mortality. Loneliness, living alone, social isolation, all increase mortality risk. And so as dementia, many studies are finding it doesn't matter loneliness, living alone, social isolation, all increase the risk of getting dementia later on. So some people say that there might be a systematic inflammation. Now I show this slide. This is my last slide. I show this because not to scare you, but I'd like to encourage everybody to try to be socially engaged. It might reduce like amyloid. Dr. Sperling's like amyloid. So reducing amyloid is far important, very important. But at the same time, we also do this kind of behavioral intervention so that we can take advantage of what we have now, and then that makes our brain function better. This behavioral may not reduce amyloid deposit, but might enhance our functioning of the brain. So by showing this, I'd like to encourage that if you know somebody who are socially isolated, please try to reach them and then contact them and then phone call or visit with mask, face mask, but try to be socially active and then help others to be socially active too. And that makes a big difference, I think. And finally, I'd like to thank my iConnect. This is the multi-disciplinary team involving technicians, MRI specialists, neurologists, gerontologists, and social workers. So I hope in the future, some of you might be able to join this intervention. Thank you.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Dr. Dodge. Thank you so much. We were hoping we would get an opportunity to enjoy this study here in Atlanta, but because of the pandemic, our end of this study will not be possible. So thank you so much, Dr. Dodge, for your presentation. Cornelia.
Yes, so really quickly, since we do have Dr. Parker, Dr. Sperling, Dr. Dodge, before we transition, I know it's after 3 o'clock. Thank you all for hanging on. We do want to cover yoga and healthy aging, but can we just address inflammation? Dr. Sperling, Dr. Dodge, Dr. Parker, can we talk about just the implications of inflammation and how that impacts your brain, like in 2 minutes or less?
Maybe we can both speak to this, because I can say I think this is a fascinating topic, and I also think it's complicated. So early on in the disease, we have some evidence that inflammation is actually a good thing for helping to clear out proteins. But later in the disease, that inflammation or the response to the clearing out of the proteins through inflammation probably is not good for nerve cells, especially synapses, the connections between nerve cells. And I often use the analogy of like when you get a cut, right? So it's critical that when you slice your knee open, that you have inflammation to be able to fight off any bacteria that would get in there. But unfortunately, that inflammation sometimes can really cause a scar or problems. And I think that might be the same in Alzheimer's disease. We don't know. And there's good inflammation and bad inflammation. We don't fully know how to separate that and how to target it yet with drugs. That's probably very simplistic. Hiroko, you should say what you think.
No, Reisa, your answer is perfect. I don't have anything to add. There's so many uncertainties. Of course, this vascular disease risk factors, hypertension, diabetes, obesity. So this can be preventable and then might lead to inflammation. So it's very important to do behavioral intervention early on, like midlife, and then try to stay on the healthy diet and healthy activities. And that's very, very important.
And so, Dr. Dodge, if people can't access the iConnect study and that intervention, what can they be doing, especially since your risk increases after age 75? What can people be doing at home during isolation right now?
Yeah, do you have any, if you have somebody to call to, friends, relatives, or make some, initiate like social conversation group, and then every week you might be able to talk with somebody. And if you cannot do this, there is a helpline. I can send you the link. It's same people who are doing suicide prevention helplines. And they now have some group, it depends on the state, but some places to provide just to talk, are you isolated, lonely? It's kind of loneliness prevention. It's same as like suicide prevention, loneliness prevention helpline. So you might, if you are, if you cannot create any social group to talk to, then you might be able to join this hotlines too. And I can send the link for that one. And I hope, I'm actually in the process of establishing a nonprofit foundation. So hopefully this kind of nonprofit can provide more social interaction to everybody.
Okay, all right. So moving on, because we want to have Megan come in and talk about our cognitive empowerment program very quickly. And then we want Whit, because we are talking about many questions are pertaining to how to prevent all of these issues around aging and inflammation and the major aging issues. We have a study right here, if you are in Georgia, that you can participate in. We've been talking about it every week, but really quickly, we're going to turn it over to Megan. Welcome, Megan. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. Let me adjust my camera here. And thank you, Cornelia. My name is Megan, and I am an ERYT 500, which means I'm a yoga teacher at the clinical level. And I work here at Emory in our cognitive empowerment program, which is a lifestyle program that is rooted in research that is designed for people who are in the early stages of mild cognitive impairment. And if you'll jump to the next slide for me, Cornelia. What's really amazing is that, we never expected in the early stages of COVID to be jumping into doing live virtual programming, but here, 30 weeks after the beginning of the shutdown, if you've been keeping track, that's where we're at, 30 weeks in. What we realized is as we switched our members who are a part of the program to doing virtual classes, that we had an opportunity to share classes that will help people with mild cognitive impairment on a larger setting. So what we've done is we've opened up a program that is an invitation to you and anybody else who would like to participate on Wednesdays. And so what is live virtual programming? What does that mean? And what we have each week on Wednesdays is a healthy lifestyle program. And these are interventions that we've been talking about, throwing around this word in BrainTalk Live, neuroprotective interventions. And that is what we were interested in. Interventions that promote joy, that promote health and promote wellness. And we talk about that a lot in these BrainTalk Lives. We should exercise, we should eat well, we should meditate and do mindfulness, but maybe it's a little bit harder to think, okay, how? So the cognitive live programming is going to be here to help support you in that journey. Each week we have 45 minutes of weekly Zoom classes. You can join us, anybody can join us. And what's so amazing is you get to participate with people who only work with people who have cognitive impairment. So the people, the teachers, the classes that will be facilitated for you are geared towards you as well, which is so exciting to be working, you know, right with experts in the field. And the other thing that's been so great about this transition into online life is that you actually can participate from home. So you don't need to go anywhere other than the laptop and the Wi-Fi. That's about all you're going to need to participate in our sessions. And if you'll jump to the next slide for me, Cornelia. And you can see here, this is our physical trainer, Ayatoni. We've got this beautiful space that's behind me here at the Emory Center. You don't need a referral. You can join at any time. And this is him teaching one of his programs. And what's so cool, we've got all the setups and all the technologies here with Emory, and we actually can interact back and forth with each other, which is so great. If you'll jump to the next slide for me. So why should you join live programming? Why set this time aside in your schedule? Virtual programming for us here at CEP is going to include yoga, accessible workouts, Tai Chi. So these are activities that are fun and might even bring a new sense of renewal and joy into your everyday life. Maybe trying something new that has never happened before to help reignite some of those neural pathways. You can discover new strategies and ways of thinking about your empowerment journey with us at CEP. We offer a lot of strategies for everyday how-to living, not just for you, but also for care partners. All of our programming is free and open to anyone to join on Wednesdays. I'll give you the links where you can write them down. You'll have access to the links, and you can also get in touch with us, and we can add you to our newsletters. And then programming is approachable, and especially while we're stuck in our homes together during these last 30 weeks, it's a really good way to connect with a loved one. Next slide, if you will. So here you see Ayatoni. He is our exercise physiologist here at CEP. He's come on to BrainTalk Live a lot before. You've probably met him if you've been tuning in. And he does functional independence that is designed to help maintain and maybe even improve your functional fitness with things like strength, mobility, flexibility. And what he offers each week is a complete body workout that includes upper body, lower body, and dynamic stretching and balance and coordination. Maybe those would be useful in your life. So we do Wednesdays at 10 a.m. physical activity with Ayatoni. And then next at noon, this is me in the space behind you guys. We've got our yoga that happens at noon on Wednesdays. It's accessible, it's approachable. We're working with all abilities, all body types, and everyone from beginner to experienced. But what you can expect from yoga programming is it's going to be chair yoga. So for most of our classes, we'll be sitting in a chair. And our goal of that program is to combat stress and to use breathing techniques and mindfulness as a tool to access more wellness. You can jump to the next slide if you will. My favorite class that we offer on Wednesdays is at 1:30, and it's Tai Chi with Tina. You can see Tina here. She's been doing Tai Chi for around 30 years. She taught Tai Chi at Spelling, which is where our program director, Taryn, met her. And what an amazing addition she has been to this team. The research that is coming out is so clear about the benefits for Tai Chi, dealing with stress, but also for cognitive decline. It's one of those things that is an amazing support resource and also really fun for two people to do together. So she does breathing and a lot of balance and footwork and coordination that are really beautiful to help energize your body. And next slide, if you will. We also have some additional special sessions that we offer from time to time. And in October, we'll be overviewing the very generic kind of diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. And it's for a deeper understanding of MCI. And that is going to be with our cognitive team here at Emory, all of our doctors who work with our members on a day-to-day basis and are so intimate with that diagnosis on October 14th at 2:30. On October 21st, if in your family unit, you've been having a hard time navigating new challenges of driving with MCI, Suzette is an amazing resource. she does a Live Well program here and has really been working with Alzheimer's for a long time. So she's going to give some great advice about navigating new challenges of driving after a diagnosis. And I see some things coming up in the chat. Do you have to have an MCI diagnosis? Absolutely not. You can come in and participate in these programs, and they're going to be neuroprotective for just about anybody. They're have a goal of having them available to view later, but at the moment they're live only. We're looking towards moving to a website that will facilitate all of these recordings, but at the moment, Wednesdays are the best time to show up. And last slide here. So here's the invitation, is that this link down below is case sensitive. So if you write it down, make sure that you include the capitalization and the lowercase letters. But that's going to be the link that you would join each week to participate in our Wednesday programming. If you type your name in the chat, we can also add you to our newsletter. So feel free, or I don't know, there's a lot of people in the call today, but we do have a newsletter that we can send out. But this link is probably the best and easiest way to get to our registration page on Wednesdays. And I've got about 20 seconds left. And so that's about it for you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But we have a lot of fun, and I would love to see all of you joining us each week on Wednesdays, starting at 10 a.m., noon, 1:30, and a few special programs at the end. So thank you, Cornelia. Feel free to exit out there.
All right. Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, if you got the housekeeping email today at before 1 p.m., a PDF of this slide deck is attached. So if you check your email and you put in the correct email, I got a lot of bounce backs today, but if you check your email, you already have this slide deck, so you can download it right now. It's a PDF and it has everything that Megan just shared with you. Okay, we have 4 minutes. Honestly, we have gone over, but I want Whit to come on really quickly. I know he needs to get to another meeting, but Whit, you can go ahead and share your screen. Thank you so much, Megan. Lots of stuff we covered today. I want you to go back and watch the recording. Yes. Okay, bear with me, Whit. It's just being slow today.
No problem. Let's see here. So let's go to screen 2. Awesome. So y'all should hopefully be able to see I think this is the right screen. Is this the big, which one are y'all seeing? You seeing the slideshow?
Healthy aging, yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so for those that are new here, my name is Whit. I'm the comms specialist here at the Emory Healthy Aging and Healthy Brain Study. And in the past several weeks, we've been talking a lot about getting involved in research, how the Emory Healthy Aging Study is a really unique opportunity to get involved in research because it's all done online. And we've talked a lot about the health history questionnaire. And since we've done that, I wanted to kind of take this opportunity just to show y'all some of the questions that we ask on the health history questionnaire. But more interestingly, we took all of the different responses that our participants have provided. We aggregated all that information together, and then we broke it all down based on responses to see what were the differences here, and then provide that information back to our participants so that they can see, where do they stand in their responses in accordance with everybody else that's participating in the aging study. Because as we mentioned, we have thousands of people now, over 16,000 people that have actually completed this health history questionnaire. And so I've got just 8 short slides with here today. And let's see if I can get it to go to the next one. It should be one of these here. So starting off here, like I said, I picked 8 different questions that we have, that we've got these really cool little graphics that we've put together, and we've picked various questions out of the health history questionnaires. And so as we're going through this, think about it on your lifestyle, on how you might interact or answer some of these questions. And we just wanted to highlight some of these different things because they're different factors really about our lifestyle and about our habits. And one of the big ones that we asked, get asked about a lot is how much alcohol is too much alcohol to drink. And so one of the first things that we love to start off with is, getting an idea of how much alcohol do people drink in a week. And as you can see, we actually have a pretty wide range on there, but even still, we still have a good number of folks that actually don't drink at all or haven't drank in the past year alone, which we thought was pretty interesting that it was so split up on here. And to kind of simplify it a little bit more then, though, when we go back, another question that we like to ask, since we do look for individuals that might be a good fit for our Alzheimer's disease research, is, do you have a family history of it? And the data that we've collected, we actually do have a pretty large percentage of our aging study participants do have a family history of Alzheimer's disease. And that is one of the things that we're looking at, as we're conducting our research. But one of the most important ones that we do, and one of the reasons that we start off with John Lewis and doing all this great activity, is that we know that, exercise is a big role for staying healthy. It affects us in so many different ways. And so we like to know a little bit more about the exercise habits of our participants. And it's a little disconcerting sometimes to see that, 38% of our participants don't do any moderate or strenuous exercise. Now, when we say moderate or strenuous, you don't have to necessarily go out and run a marathon, but we are talking about getting that heart rate up, keeping that heart rate up, and really trying to utilize some of those muscles there. We do see a decent chunk of people, though, that are at least getting it in, 3 to 4 days a week, which is a good goal to shoot for. And then we talked a little bit about sleep earlier. During Dr. Berquist's presentation, she mentioned sleep and how much sleep we're getting. And so we actually have 2 sleep questions here. But the first one I like to start off with, because I'm not particularly a morning person, is what time do you typically wake up? And as you can see, it is a huge number. More than 50%, more than half of all of our participants are actually getting up between the hours of 6 and just before 8 a.m., which is, I think, a pretty common thing. Do note that, the majority of our participants are over the age of 55. And so when we're looking at some of this data, it kind of gives us a little bit more insight as, well, maybe what some of the daily habits might be of our participants. But another really big important one here is how many hours of sleep are people getting? And so Dr. Berquist mentioned earlier that, you really don't usually want to shoot for less than that 7 hours of sleep. And we're really excited to see that, here, more than 60% of our participants are getting 7 to 8 hours on average, which is a really good thing. We do see a decent bit, though, dip down into that 5 to 6, and lifestyle plays a big role on that. And we always look for different information on what we can glean and kind of learn from this kind of stuff. And then we have 2 more to go. This one I think is really interesting because of how technology has changed so much. I mean, we're in a massive webinar right now. We're communicating with each other, and, reading paperback books and magazines and things like that doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent as it used to be, given the technology with iPads and Kindles and things like that. But it is really exciting to see that whether or not you're reading it on paper or electronically, that we do have a large proportion of our participants are active readers. And that's a really, really good activity, just to keep your mind fresh, keeps your mind engaged. And it's something that, we definitely recommend doing pretty frequently. And the last one on here, and this one I think is always a kind of a fun one, is when you think about your memory, how does it compare to 10 years ago? And we get such a big split on this question because as you can see, just over 40% of our participants say it's the same. And then just a little bit more than that are saying it's actually worse. And really, the deviation there for much worse, much better, and no response is very, very low. And that's an interesting one that I personally like to look at year over year to see, is that changing? If so, what direction is that moving in? But this is just a sample of some of the different types of questions that we ask on the health history questionnaire in the healthy aging study. And some of the different information that we're able to kind of compare and present in our annual reports for our participants to look back and see how their answers may have compared or differed from, the rest of those in the cohort. And so I am a little over time here. I do have a hard stop, but I just want to make sure that you do have my email address as usual. If you have any questions about the Healthy Aging Study, feel free to email us there, or you can email me directly. My email is jefferson.morgan. And of course, if you want to get involved with the study itself, you can join at healthyaging.emory.edu.
Excellent. And Whit, if you have time to post that in the chat really quickly.
Yep.
So again, we have 200 participants still hanging with us. So we are going to wrap up here in the next few minutes. So today we talked about healthy aging. We talked about preventing Alzheimer's. We talked about dementia and isolation. We covered a lot. And then we gave you resources. So there are some key action items, and I just want to invite Dr. Parker, Dr. Dodge, and Dr. Sperling to come back on and just give us 1 or 2 nuggets as we close. We have lots of things to sign up for and opportunities we prevented, but what is one key thing that you would tell people to do that they can do right here in their home while we're in a pandemic, as we are aging and trying to age successfully? Dr. Parker?
Okay, I'm going to say, for everybody who's asked me in the chat, how do I get my memory checked? I'm going to go back to something we talked about earlier this season. Please talk to your primary care doctor about your concerns about your memory. If you're 65 years of age and older, during your annual wellness visit, you should be getting a memory screen and a depression screen. Your primary care doctor is in the best position to order exams and do other things that are necessary to help make an assessment for why you may or may not be thinking as clearly as you think you should. You may be among the worried well. So from a primary care perspective, please discuss these things with your primary care doctor first. Dr. Dodge, Dr. Sperling?
I'll just say, I think you are, oops, let me put on my video here. I think you're doing one of the most important things already, which is staying engaged and being on this webinar. I didn't get to talk much about exercise, but I really do think that's key. We have clear evidence that exercise interacts with amyloid to promote tau and neurodegeneration. And I'm so worried about people being stuck in their houses like I am, although now I've got some new chair exercises to do during my Zoom. So, and lastly, I'd just say that if you want to be involved in web studies, and it sounds like some of this great things that Dr. Parker's offering are great, because I do think we can take advantage of this technology and be able to stay connected and work on things even when we're stuck in our houses.
Thank you, Reisa. Dr. Dodge.
Well, I'm so pleased to see this Emory Healthy Aging program is reaching out so many people. I'm very impressed, like over 200 people signed up for today's classes. And it's wonderful that Emory is doing, offering this program. And I really admire your effort here. And one thing I just want to mention is that we focus so many life modification, like how you have to live a healthy lifestyle, keep the brain intact. But regardless of this, some people get dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And I know this by fact, very healthy, brilliant, very exercise enthusiast, sometimes get AD. So don't blame yourself or others by saying, oh, he or she may not have done enough. That's not the case. It's some people just get it. So you do as much as possible to prevent, but we also have to acknowledge that don't blame others when they get it, saying that they didn't do enough. So that's not the case. So I just warn, we have so much emphasis on lifestyle, and which is great, and we should do it, but don't blame yourself or others not doing this. That's it.
Okay, I think we're good, Cornelia. Again, thank you to all of you who stayed on till the end. Thank you so much for our special guests, Dr. Berquist, Dr. Dodge, and Dr. Sperling. We hope to hear from you more when we can meet in person. And again, all of the information that you've heard today will be available via program presentation later, all of the websites. Please look out for Dr. Sperling's Ahead study. And there's information that was in the chat that went into this, but also for people who are interested in special studies, I put in the question and answers or chat site about Research Match for your search of any study that you're particularly interested in. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.